Hello, everyone. Thank you, Letty. It's my pleasure to be here, and I'm looking forward to sharing the next 90 minutes with you. So let's get started. This is all about discovering your child's learning strengths. And so to prepare for that a little bit, I have a little bit of a question here for you. What do you hope for your children? In other words, when they are all grown up, what do you wish for them? And I know we're not having an interactive back and forth, and we're not in the same room, but just think about it for a minute and write your answers down maybe, or just think about your answers when they're all grown up. What do you wish for them? And we've asked this question just everywhere across the country when we do workshops and seminars and presentations, in homeschool groups, parent groups, in classrooms. We ask it of teachers in traditional schools. And here's the thing. Nobody ever says we are yet to, we are yet to hear, when they grow up, I want my child to be a spelling champion or a math genius or to write with perfect punctuation or be a soccer star. Well, maybe that last one sometimes in sports. But what usually people say, and this is even in other countries, because we've been to Japan and Canada and different countries, and parents say the same kinds of things. We want them to be happy. We want them to have good relationships. We want them to be productive. We want them to be confident about themselves and have a good job or a good career, or like what they do, love what they do. We want them to have a family life. Those are the kinds of things that people say. So while school is really important and learning is very important, and it can lead to some of those things that I just mentioned, we need to be careful about how we approach it. And this is, I'm pretty sure most people on this webinar are homeschooling or thinking about homeschooling. Very often we have those fears because we either went to traditional school ourselves, most of us did, or even if we didn't, there are a lot of people around us asking, well, what are you doing? And are you sure that's right? And how do you know this? And how do you know that? How do you know you're doing the right thing? All of those things that homeschoolers hear all the time. And sometimes in our own minds, the little voices there. And some of you have been homeschooling for a long time. And, every once in a while, it still crops up. You might be a very confident homeschooler, and no matter what type of homeschooling you're doing, it could be very loose, it could be unschooling, it could be more traditional, and yet every once in a while that little voice might still come up. Are you sure you know what you're doing? And so let's explore now, because here's the thing. Your parenting job is to guide your children in discovering their unique gifts. And I'm not going to be saying some things that you don't know. You really do know what I'm about to say, but it's good to be reminded. Your children's gifts are their blueprints for their success, and you are their guides to discerning who they are and to becoming confident adults, eager to contribute to the world. That's really what we're here for, to prepare our children for that. And so how do you do that? Number one, honor the differences, honor who they are, give positive messages, and focus on strengths. So these all go together, and when we get to number 3, that's when we'll get into the actual types of learners, but we'll go pretty quickly through honor the differences and give positive messages, because if you don't have that piece, it won't work. So here's a little cartoon about honoring differences. Now, some of you are going to see 4 items there, and some of you will see 3. And for some of you, it'll bounce back and forth. No 4, no 3, no 4, no 3. For some who are seeing 3, you will never see 4 unless somebody actually outlines them for you and shows you where they are. And some of you who are seeing 4 will never see 3 again unless someone just outlines it for you so that you can see that. And it's, you know, it's a cartoon. It's one of those things, but it really shows that people are different and they do see things differently. And in this case, the person who sees 4 is not wrong. The person who sees 3 is not wrong because they're both there. And if you see both, you're not wrong. So they're all right. And we need to bring that sort of mindset to our teaching as well and look at learning in that way for our children. So there are different needs for learning. So let's connect that now. If you have a child who has a spontaneous type learning personality, the best way for that child to learn, that student, is movement, fun, and games. And if you have a curious learning personality, asking questions, discovering, tinkering around, taking things apart, that's the best way for them. You have a supportive learning personality, collaborating, working together, discussing, doing like projects where you each have a job. Those kinds of things work best for supportive. Imaginative students need lots of time to wonder and just think about things and create. That's their best way to learn. Now, there is one more, and it is the organized learning personality. And this one is the one that everyone sort of likes the best, especially classroom teachers. So, but you might at home too, because if you have it all set up for the organized personality, just like a sort of a classroom, then you have it set up for these people: structure, organization, planning, and step-by-step. And we'll be talking more about this later, but right now, I want you to see what the labels are associated with these. So somebody that has a spontaneous, we call it disposition or learning personality, is very often labeled hyperactive. And those who are curious are often labeled ADD. Supportive is, you know, basically disruptive because they need to talk in order to learn and they want to discuss. And imaginative is also often labeled ADD. The organized one is kind of labeled the perfect student and the perfect disposition for the traditional learning setup. And again, although I think most people on the webinar here are homeschooling, it's very easy to fall back on what they do in a traditional classroom, even though a lot of homeschool is because we don't like so much the way things are taught there. It's really easy to fall back on and not even realize you're doing it. So I am going to be talking about that a little bit here and there. Okay, so here's the thing. People that learn differently, for example, we were seeing the 4 logs and the 3. Some people saw 3, some people saw 4. And if you were the 3 and your teacher was saying, no, there are 4. Can't you see it? No, there are 4. Or vice versa. So that brings us to this cartoon. I got a lot of answers, but no one ever asked the right questions. So all these students who know so much and are brilliant and can see things from all different aspects, but nobody's asking the question that they can answer to show their brilliance, because the questions, the workbooks, the worksheets, and even if you're doing more project-like things, sometimes are still geared more toward one type of learner. So we have to be aware of that. Okay, the next thing is give positive messages. I like this quote from Einstein: everybody's a genius, but if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing that it is stupid. And this because we treat, again, mostly in school, but sometimes in homeschool, because we get parents that come to us and say, I thought homeschool would be more fun or easier, but, they still won't do their work in the book. And it's because they're being treated like, like the fish being asked to climb a tree. It still doesn't work whether they're sitting at home, in your den, or in a classroom. It's still the same type of information or the same format that you're trying to give them, and so it still doesn't work. So we need to give positive messages, because otherwise this is what happens. Discouragement and low self-esteem often begin with school, wherever school may be. Kids are judged so much by how they do in academics. The self-images they develop while learning, they stay with them and affect their whole lives. And we know this. We've been doing this now for, I guess, 30 years. And we work with adults, we work with parents, of course, and we hear this all the time. Sometimes when we have adult type workshops, like life coaching type workshops, well, no, I can't do that because, I wasn't very smart in school, so I know that I can't do that. This stays with you forever. And some of you on the call might be relating to that right now on this webinar. So we don't want to do that to our kids. If you learn growing up that you're not very smart, you're not good enough, you have nothing to contribute, and you're a failure, that's what you will believe as an adult. And, here's an example of someone who made it in spite of this, but that's a very low percentage of people who do. If you can read this, this is a report card or a feedback on this student's work here. His work has been far from satisfactory. Several times he has been in trouble because he will not listen, but will insist on doing his work in his own way. I believe he has ideas about becoming a scientist. I'm having trouble reading it because there's a panel here in the middle of this thing, and so just bear with me for a second here. I believe he has ideas about becoming a scientist. On his present showing, this is quite ridiculous. It would be a sheer waste of time, both on his part and of those who have to teach him. And here's just a high school report card of John Gurdon, winner of the 2012 Nobel Prize in Physiology and Medicine. So obviously what this teacher wrote does not match who this person really is. And we have so many students right now sitting at home or sitting in classrooms happening to, and they are our future Nobel Prize winners or scientists or actors or landscape artists or whatever. They're our future. So we need to look at what are their strengths. And children often hear things like, if your spelling doesn't improve, you can't be on the team. This happens at home too. So that's why I'm going through this. So think about it if this is happening in your home. Those are great ideas, but your writing is messy. You need to be more responsible and study harder. You got a B next time, get an A. No playing outside until you finish your homework, because homeschool is sort of like it's all homework, right? You might be good at whatever it is, but that won't get you far in life. If you don't take school seriously, you'll never get anywhere. This is still said to preschoolers. I hear preschoolers, I've heard parents say this to preschoolers. Hopefully nobody here is identifying with that. But there are different versions of it. Sometimes it's more subtle, but the kids are picking it up. When you're worried, my preschooler still doesn't know colors, still doesn't do this, still doesn't do that. But what do they do? Let's look at what they do. And that's the whole point of this. So again, you have to go to college. You have to get in a top university. We expect you to become a lawyer. We expect you not to become a lawyer. we need you in the family business, or forget being an artist, all the good jobs are in technology. That's not a real job. How will you support yourself? All of these things, I know we're worried. We're worried about our children. We want them to do the best in life, and hence the question I asked at the beginning, what do you want for your children? But we won't get there with these kinds of messages. So instead, I love how creative you are. You're so funny. You always make us laugh. If that's what you choose, I'll help you get there. Let's figure out if college is right for you, or which college is right for you. Let's come up with some ideas to improve your spelling. All of these are positive messages, and they work well when even better when you know what their strengths are and what their learning needs are, which we're going to get into in a second, because then you'll know the right comments to make here. So focus on their strengths. Here we go. I love this cartoon. The teacher says, Sarah needs to work on her handwriting. The mom is thinking, my child is going to be a doctor. So again, focusing on positive, focusing on strengths. And these are the dispositions, or the learning personalities, that we look at in our work with students and adults. They're kind of like adjustable seats. Everybody doesn't fit in one seat. We're always adjusting our car seats, or the toddler seat, or the high chair, or whatever. And so we have to keep doing that. We have to keep adjusting the seats to fit the particular person. So our model of looking at strengths includes dispositions, modalities, talents, interests, and environment. And they're all listed here. Oops, that moved. And we're going to go through these in a second. So, but you can see the outline, the basic outline here. So let's go. So the first one, the first part is the disposition power traits. These are our learning personalities. They are what others, they show up very early. Even little kids, we can kind of see, oh, look at him, he's all over the place. Or that one is quiet. You know, my little granddaughter, she was, oh my gosh, she was barely 6 or 7 months old. And she was already grabbing for pieces of paper, and she would sit quietly and just squiggle with crayons and pencils. I mean, she was already doing that. Whereas another child doesn't even want a piece of paper ever, but certainly not when they're 5, 6, 7, or 8 years old. So we have to pay attention to these things. Our personalities affect how we learn, work, and communicate. And so here's the short version. The spontaneous, the key word for spontaneous is move. I got to move in order to learn. Organized, I have to plan in order to learn. Curious, I have to discover. Supportive, interacting, that's the main thing I need in order to learn. And imaginative, wonder is the most important thing that leads to my learning. So school preferred, and again, I'm using these because often they slip into our home schools. They prefer people who are have the organized and supportive dispositions, when truly in a class, there are about 10% of students that are the organized and 25 to 30 are the supportive, but the rest are kind of left out, and they're the ones that are labeled again. So the imaginative, the curious, and the spontaneous together make 60 to 70% of the population. So not just in a classroom of, say, 20 or 30, but in the population. So chances are in your family, you might not even have one person who is organized or supportive as their top dispositions, including the parents. So we need to look at that. It makes a difference in how you learn, how you operate, you know, just how you do things. And these are the lost potentials because the majority of inventors, scientists, entrepreneurs, musicians, poets, philosophers, artists, creative people in general they come from these dispositions: curious, spontaneous, and imaginative. And those are the ones that we tend to say, oh no, you can't be like that. There's something wrong with that. You know, it must be AED, it must be hyper. You have to settle down. You have to do it this way. You have to use the books, the workbooks, or at least do the project this way, or you have to sit there and do your work. So it just doesn't work that way for these people. And so they're often labeled ADD, ADHD. They experience failure almost daily, maybe not in homeschool again, but I just want to bring these things up because, as I said, we get lots of calls from homeschoolers who are saying, my child feels like a failure and I can see that he can't do this stuff or she can't do this stuff and I don't know what to do. And often homeschoolers are using a particular curriculum and it's not working. So they don't realize how smart they are. And maybe you know deep down they're smart, but you don't know how to bring it out. And these people don't know that they have unlimited possibilities, and so they grow up believing they have nothing to contribute. So we want to change that. So here's just a little idea of how you can adapt a lesson. So this is an ocean study. And so the first one, we just have the icons here, but the first one is the curious disposition. So if you're studying the ocean, they can invent or draw or make a new kind of sea creature or underwater environment or something inventive like that. The next one, that's the organized. And of course, they usually like to do lists and come up with the facts. Maybe do a little bit of a map, but mostly they often really like to do outlines, question and answer things, so that will work for them. The next one is the imaginative. Draw, paint, make a scrapbook, a collage. The next one is supportive. Work with 2 or 3 other people to create something together, a project together, create a brochure, a poster. Each one can take a job or they can just work together. And then the last one is spontaneous. They might write a rap song or act something out or actually put on a play, a skit, something like that, or a demonstration. So that's a quick look at how you would apply, the study of one particular topic to the different dispositions. Okay, then the next section is modality. This is another aspect or dimension of our of looking at our strengths. Modalities are our information processing equipment, the best way for your brain to take in and process ideas, information, and learning of any kind. So there are listening modalities. You need to hear the voice of others. So this includes audiobooks, lectures, even videos, although sometimes people who are really strong audio people need to block out the visual in order to really take in the information. Otherwise it's distracting. So that's why it says there, you might have to close your eyes and just listen, because it's the listening part for these students. Now, the verbal modality needs to hear the sound of their own voice. And so sometimes this is a problem because if they are reading aloud or they're, it sounds like they're talking. And so it might disturb the other students that you have at home, or maybe disturbing you. You're trying to get your work done. Or this happens sometimes. Let's say they are working on something and there's an instruction there and they come up and say, I don't get this. You can read it. Read what it says. And so the child starts to read it out loud and goes, oh, I get it. Never mind. Goes back and sits down, does it. Comes back a little bit later. I don't get this. And you say, what? Just read it. So she reads it out loud. Oh, okay, never mind. And so what's happening is she needs to hear the sound of her own voice. So just tell her to do that. Because a lot of times we're thinking, oh, for heaven's sakes, they just want to disrupt me, or, you know, they need to get up and down, and they want attention, all these things, when no, they really don't know what it is until they can read it out loud. So if you just say, hey, how about if you try reading these things out loud to yourself? You can do it quietly, or you can do it in the corner, go in the corner, you know, whisper to yourself, see what happens. And so this also explaining to others and discussing with others, those are all ways of implementing the verbal modality. And so this is also the student or child who needs to talk everything over, and you're trying to maybe do your checkbook or something, and you know, well, you know what, I saw this, and then I heard this, and then this, and then I learned blah, blah, blah. And you're thinking, what? You don't need to tell me all this. But they do, or they need to tell someone, or teach them to record themselves, to record their own voice, and then it becomes a report or a presentation. But we just need to acknowledge that these are students who need to hear their own voice. Okay. 85% of traditional teaching requires excellent listening skills, because people are talking, and you know, the teacher, the presenter is talking, and you're supposed to listen. 20% of learners in a traditional classroom have these skills. So again, think about it. If you do a lot of talking or presenting that way, it might not fit your student, but if your student is a listening or a verbal, they will need that. Picture modality. Okay, so the picture person needs pictures, illustrations, images, charts, graphs, videos, maps, graphics. Flashcards do not work for picture learner normally, unless they also have the print modality, which we're going to do in a minute. But if they only have a picture modality, people often do flashcards because they think, oh, visual, visual. They'll memorize these words. Words are not pictures. So it might work in the short term for a few words here and there, but not long. Waste your time doing that. There are other ways to work with the picture learner. Print learner, flashcards, yes. Textbooks, any kind of books, newspapers, anything that has print, includes internet research. 95% of school studies require excellent print processing skills, but many more students are picture learners than print learners. So if your student is not a print learner, this happens too sometimes. You might have, you know, an online program that they're working on, but it's not interactive. It might just be kind of like a textbook online. So they have to do a lot of reading. And if they're not print learners, that won't work. So often people are, you know, disappointed because they think, but it's on the computer and they like working on the computer. But it's still just straight reading, like a textbook. The difference is, instead of being this book on your desk, you know, it's on the screen. And I'm not saying not to ever have any of these things with some students who are not strong in these areas. I'm just saying we need to work more in their strengths, because that's where real learning takes place, and not force students to always be in their modalities or dispositions that don't work for them. Then there are the movement modalities. So the whole body modality is actually doing that, building, experiencing the whole thing, visiting a place, doing it. Hands-on, take apart, make something. That's more, it's still a movement, but it's more with your hands, where you're building something or constructing a model, something like that. Sketching, the sketching learner, well through drawing and doodling. And so these are the people who are always doodling in the margins or drawing while they're listening to something. They often get in trouble because people think they're not paying attention, but they are. And it's the drawing or the doodling that's actually helping them to stay focused. It's like a person that knits. and they're watching television, and they can knit and listen to the radio or watch TV because, you know, they can just do it. It's automatic. But the knitting helps them to just stay focused. They're keeping their hands busy. So for sketching learners, it's the sketching that does it for them. For the hands-on and the whole body, it could be that like they're like the squeeze balls or something for the hands-on that they need to have with, if you want them especially to focus on something that's not their strength. Like if they're listening to something and it's not one of their primary modalities, they need something to help them focus. For whole body, they might be jumping rope or jumping on a trampoline or bouncing a ball while they're memorizing or learning something, or needing to focus. And then the last one, the writing. A learner takes notes, makes outlines, and remembers exactly what they wrote. Some of you on the call might identify with this. When you were in school, if you wrote it down, you could remember every word you wrote. You could see it on the page. You could bring it back up when you took the test. That means you're a writing learner. People who are not writing learners do have trouble taking notes, and I'm not saying don't teach that as a skill. Sometimes it's needed. However, it's still not their primary way of learning. So don't expect it to be if they are not writing learners. And here's another place where there's the myth that if they write their spelling words over and over again, they'll learn them. So if that was the case, all the terrible spellers that are adults, that when they were kids, should be good spellers now. But they're not, because they're not writing learners, and they will never learn a complicated spelling word by writing it. They might learn one or two, but the majority, they'll forget it almost as soon as they've written it down. So again, there are other strategies for that. But don't waste your time having your kids write their words over and over if that's what you're doing, because it will never work. If you're a true writing learner and you did miss a word, if you wrote it one time, you would remember it for the rest of your life, because that's what a writing learner does. Okay. Now, a high percentage of students are whole body hands-on learners because in the population, 60 to 70% of people are whole body and hands-on learners. So we have to pay attention to that and meet their needs. Again, on a traditional learning, if you're using traditional textbooks curriculum, it's heavy on print, listening, and writing. And the actual population, 60 to 70% are hands-on and whole body, and 20% picture learners. So this is a chart that shows all of those, it shows the dispositions and modalities that we just went through. And now we're going to get to the other three dimensions. But first, a quick summary of the modality. You see that there's listening and verbal. Listening is the one that's preferred in traditional teaching. Under visual, print is the one that's preferred. And under movement, writing is the one that's preferred. But we need to pay attention to those other modality needs as well. Okay, so now we're on to interests. Interests are our greatest motivators. A person will work hard, will work a long time when the topic is of interest. It will drive learning when nothing else will, and it can outdo a talent. There are many, many stories of people who are less talented even than a, but they just loved that thing, and they just worked and worked and worked at it and became proficient and, you know, way past the person in the family who had the talent but wasn't interested in it. Whenever possible, allow your kids to link learning to their interests. But this is what happens. Often interests are considered privileges, and they're taken away if students don't do what they are supposed to be doing. So again, they didn't do so great in spelling, or they didn't finish this workbook or other, and so they can't go to the game, whatever the privilege is, or they can't play on the team. So here's what I'm recommending. This strategy leads to resentment rather than motivation. And many students give up on their interests altogether. They grow up to be adults who can believe that their interests have no value. Again, we've been doing this for a really long time, 30 years at least. We get students in here all the time, or even adults who are stuck on this. And they've been told over and over that, you know, whatever their interest is of no value. And that's what they believe. But they also believe that they're not very smart. And so what else are they going to do? So integrate the interest with the subjects being studied. The chemistry of cooking, the history of horses, the physics of skateboarding, making a photo journal for literature, put on skits, create games. Creating games is amazing, especially for those kids who love games. If you create a game for a topic that you're studying, you have to know a lot about the topic. You really have to study it and know the answers, because how else are you going to create the game with the correct answers? So really think about that. And of course, putting on skits for the spontaneous people. And then we have environment, our surroundings. They can greatly affect everything we do, but they're easily taken for granted. And yet often simple changes can make a big improvement in studying or learning. And so these are all things that can affect a learner. You know this yourself. If you're somebody who cannot stand noise when you're doing something, then you know you feel like you're going crazy, whether it's at work or at home. You need quiet. Other people need noise in the background, or they can't do anything. It's too quiet. Some people do best with music in the background. Also the body position, standing, reclining like on a beanbag chair, or sitting. These are all legitimate ways of doing your work or studying. Lighting can be a factor, bright, natural, dim light. A lot of people, adults as well as students, have a problem with fluorescent lighting. It makes them even hyper. It can, it compromises the immune system. So if you have a student who's, if you're working a lot under fluorescent lights at home, consider going to those grow lights or some version of them. Those are the ones that you put over plants. They sell them at nurseries or online. If you put fluorescent lights over plants, the plants will die. There have been lots of studies about this unnatural light, the fluorescent lighting, and how it affects people. Even to, you know, headaches, getting sick, all of that kind of thing. But it can affect your eyes and how you're seeing the paper. Temperature, some people need it warmer, some people need it cooler. If you have a favorite color, that can improve your outlook if you have it around you. If you are around a color you can't stand, that can affect you too. Time of day, few students are morning alert, like 7 in the morning, say, or 8 in the morning. You might be laughing, saying this is homeschool, we don't start that early. But even so, the idea is to look at time of day and when are they at their best for doing even the most, difficult studying and learning. Some people learn best alone, some do best in small groups, some in a group of 2. And then snacks, hopefully if you are doing snacks, they're healthy snacks, but some couldn't care less. They could sit there all day and at a desk, and that's the organized person a lot, can just sit there all day and do work after work, worksheet after worksheet, book after book, never need a thing, and somebody else needs to take a break every 15 minutes or have some water, get a snack, etc. And you might be thinking, oh, okay, so I'm going to do all of these things for I have 3 kids, what am I going to do with, No, you don't have to do every single one. But here's the thing, some people For some people, one of these will be more crucial than for somebody else. So one person might not care whether it's quiet or noisy, but somebody else cannot work at all if it's noisy. So maybe that person needs, the headphones that block out the noise, or the person listening to music, because that's helpful to them, might put headphones on to listen to the music, and then it's quiet for the other people. So you can learn to have family meetings, actually, and what do we do about this particular thing? And then, of course, that leads to better communication and how to get your needs met and how to talk in a family and relationships. So a lot of good comes out of this. Again, you can't provide every single thing for every person, but each person can learn what their needs are, what their most crucial needs are, and how to get those met. And that's a lifelong, thing to learn, because that goes with you wherever you go. Actually, all of this that we're talking about goes with you wherever you go. It's not just for school and learning. So traditional likes quiet, sitting at a desk, and being alone. And as I said, we need to look at all of those other ways of learning. Now, talents are we're just kind of born with them. We're not always interested in our talents, as I mentioned before. So sometimes students are forced to pursue talents that don't interest them. But another thing can happen. Sometimes we fail to encourage students to pursue talents that do interest them, because maybe we don't think that's a good talent to pursue. So either way, we need to keep some balance there, and really learn about your child, learn about your children. Who are they? And it doesn't mean that they're going to end up even maybe doing the thing that they say they want to do, but it's worth exploring, because if they're interested in it or have a talent that they're interested in, it's worth exploring. So here are all the talents, and we're not going to go through them all. I know this is being recorded, so you can look at it later. And preferred talents for a school environment are word language and math logic. And again, there are so many others that we need to look at. So acknowledge and encourage the talents of all of your children. Integrate talents whenever possible, and avoid forcing talents when there's no interest in them. Okay, so we're just going to be wrapping up here, and then we'll get to our questions. So we came up with these laws for successful learning. We had a mom in one of our parent workshops one time, and all of a sudden she just blurted out, "I get it, learning doesn't have to hurt." And we said, "Hey, could we use that?" So we've been using it ever since. And it became part of our laws for successful learning. Learning doesn't have to hurt, success leads to more success, and coaching brings out the star. So be your child's best learning coach. This approach leads to engagement, motivation, confidence, endurance, and contribution. And we do have more information in our book, Discover Your Child's Learning Style, which is available anywhere, or, online, Amazon, or bookstores. There is also more information at the Homeschool Buyers Co-op Learning Styles page. The link for that here is on the bottom here of the slide. But if you go there, there's a place where you click on Learning Styles, and it gives more information about the dispositions and modalities. And
so,
also,
sorry,
yeah,
just a second. So if anyone is looking for that, on the left side of the site, when you come to the home page, it's down at the bottom, under the way at the bottom. So
okay,
just so
great.
People know where to look.
Yeah, that's good. This is a screenshot of that page that I took that's on this slide. So this is what you'll see when you first get to that page. Okay, and then we have a back to school. The co-op is having a back to school special for you. Most of you know that we have our self-portrait power traits assessment. And I was going through the different parts of it now to show you what it assesses. You don't need it. I mean, if you can guess what your kids are, you know, you can go from there. But it's a really nice tool. The whole family can take it, and then you can have great family discussions. You can compare, you know, each other's strengths, and where one person, you can even do this for, I love this, so can I do that? And somebody else will do the thing they like or are good at. So anyway, the homeschool buyers regular discounted price is $19.95, but until August 31st, they're $15 each. And on our website, they're $35. So you get a good deal anyway, but until August 31st, an even better one at 15. So
Yeah, and just to mention, so you're going to register for the coupon and actually purchase it through your site. So
right,
yeah.
right. You register at the co-op, you get a whatever you get. I don't remember
coupon,
what.
Yeah. A link and a coupon.
Yeah, and then it directs you to that link, and then you automatically get that $15 using that link until August 31st. Okay, so now we're ready for questions. So questions in that little question box. I'll be happy to answer. I know I went through pretty quickly, and the idea was to get through that, and so then people can ask questions that are pertinent, you know, to you. And Letty, did you have any questions?
Yeah, I have a question. Well, actually, there's some questions here.
Okay, I don't see anything in my box, so maybe you can read them to me.
It's at the top here, so let me look. Hold on.
I have the question box open, but there's nothing there, so.
Yeah, it's sort of squished. Well, why don't I sort out this question from Teresa?
Okay.
But I actually have a question. I'll kick it off. So I took the test or the assessment, and my daughter took it. And we definitely had lots of different learning styles.
Okay.
So, you know, what advice would you have, you know, when you do have a household with different learning styles, and how to sort of overlap? You sort of touched on it when you were talking about the conditions, right? But, you know, any other advice on sort of how to make it all work?
Yeah, and of course it depends on how many kids you have and how many different types of styles there are. Like I've talked with families who have 5 or 6 kids, you know, and they're all different, and then others have maybe 2. I think the thing to start with is to have that family meeting and really talk about all the differences. And then talk to each person separately and find out, you know, is this really meeting your needs? What can we explore for this coming year? Because when you take this, those of you who decide to take the assessment, or maybe you already did, have your kids take it, and if you take it too, it's great. You'll see that there are accompanying there's follow-up materials there. And then one of the websites you can go to it now, you don't have to get the assessment to go there, powertraitsforlife.com has all kinds of tips and strategies for the different styles. So even your kids, your older kids, you know, who could read that and understand it, could go there and get ideas for what might work better for them. But there are also printed materials. You can download the manuals and the guides and print them out so that they're always there for reference. We have people make little desk cards for themselves. We have teachers do this in a classroom too. So you take like a 5x8 card, you know, and fold it so that it stands up on the desk or table. And then On the one side, you put your name, and you put your top 2 dispositions, your 3 main modalities, a couple of your interests, a couple of your high talents. And, you know, some people just write them. Some people are creative, so they have all kinds of color and graphics and stuff. But then you're always aware of who this person is. So it's possible that even if you have 5 or 6 kids, that you can actually customize for each one of them. And if they're close, if some of them are close in age and you're doing the same topic, so let's just say you're learning about the pyramids. Well, each person can do something different depending on their dispositions and modalities. So there might be a time where you're all sitting there and talking about it, or they have to read something. But one person might be watching a video about it to learn about it, and another person might be listening to an audiobook, and somebody else might be researching and reading in books, and then they all bring the information. And then they can go off again and do an assignment, perhaps to show how they learned in a way, again, that fits their own learning styles. So somebody might put on a skit or a demonstration or make a video or make a PowerPoint, and somebody else might do drawings. Somebody might do a traditional essay. So that's how you do it, and you don't even have to be having everybody learning a different thing. Does that answer? Is that helpful, Eddie?
Yeah, I think so. Hopefully it helped the members listening too. So
yeah. And if you're and as the parent, you know, if you're very different, usually the parent is different from at least one of the kids, often from several. If you have just one child, sometimes you just are exactly the same. That makes it easier, but usually not. So what I always say is, things do have to be comfortable for you too, because you are the teacher. On the other hand, you are the teacher. And it doesn't matter if you don't like to learn by drawing. It's your job and the mentor to draw out of that student the best from that student in the way that meets their needs the best for learning. And so, you know, you might not care about drawing, maybe you can't draw whatever, but if your child can do the best by drawing things out, even math word problems, they might not get it until they draw a little sketch of it. So it doesn't matter that you don't need that and it doesn't work for you. It matters what this works for them, if that makes sense.
great. Well, if you so I have a list of questions, so I'll go through some. So
okay.
there was one general one, is that they missed the beginning, and will they be able to replay? So yes, after the webinar is concluded, we will post it to the co-op website. It'll probably take about a day, so you can look for it tomorrow. And if you want to tell your friends that it's there in case they missed it, anybody's welcome to listen to it. Here's another question on, do learning styles change over a lifetime? Would learning styles need to be reassessed periodically to see if something has changed?
Okay, so if a person is, okay, so let me say this. If it's accurately answered when the person takes it, it's pretty much that's who you are, and it stays throughout your lifetime. You know, the numbers might change a tiny bit. For example, let's say you scored 40 in spontaneous and your second highest was this. If you took it again a few years later, if it was accurate, you'd still have those as your top 2, but they might switch positions. Maybe curious is a little higher this time than spontaneous, or the numbers just changed a little bit. So that happens. If it wasn't totally accurate, and by that I don't mean that you did something bad or wrong, I just mean when you were answering it at that time, this was what you thought, you know? And so if you take it again later, it might be different. Now, there is a special case with kids, because if you're giving it, first of all, they have to be 8 years or older to take this one online. we do have another version of it, but it's an observation one for younger kids. And you can get that in the book. But you have to be 8 years or older because you have to have some kind of understanding in order to answer the questions. Parents can read the questions to the student because we want to make sure that they are getting it, but they have to be old enough to understand what the question means and to answer it. So if you're giving it, let's say, to a third grader, they might not know enough about themselves yet in the learning situation to answer completely accurately. However, it gives you a really good idea. So that's when, if you gave it a little bit later, like say 5th or 6th grade again, it might be changed somewhat because they're older at that time. So I would say if you're doing it in 3rd or 4th grade, do it again in maybe 6th or 7th, and do it again maybe 9th or 10th grade, or even 11th grade as they're becoming closer to adults. But it's very interesting for us to see that the majority that have done that, because we've been doing this now for many years, as they approach being, seniors in high school, they're still basically getting the same results that they did when they were young kids in elementary. So it's pretty accurate.
Great. Well, Lorraine gave us that question, so thank you, Lorraine. Okay, so this question from a user with initial P. So, do you have a list of studies that proves that teaching to a learning style modality actually improves learning and retention? Neurological studies are showing that teaching to learning styles makes no difference in student learning.
Mm-hmm. Yes, we know all about the studies, and in fact, we've changed on our own websites. We've taken off all of the terms that say learning styles because people are talking about these studies. And all I've been doing this, as I said, for I think it's over 30 years now. And we see the difference every single day. So it's impossible to go into all the studies and say, oh, but you did it this way and that's why you got this result. And we're not talking just about modality here. That's another fallacy, because often learning styles is just modality: visual, auditory, and kinesthetic. And although that can make it, there's more to it than that. And so that's why we have that sort of complete package of looking at the disposition, the personality style, interest, talents, etc. So I'm not going to try to dispute it. There's tons out there that say it doesn't work, but there's tons out there also. The Duns were legendary in their studies of this over 50 years ago. They have proof positive in classrooms and homes that it works when you meet people's learning needs, and it makes sense. It's actually ancient. It goes way back to Aristotle and Plato. So we just know it works. So you can give it a try, and see if it.
Great. Okay, so the next sort of set of questions are about suggestions for different types of I should say learning dispositions, correct. So Gail writes, would love suggestions for helping teach basic math skills like times tables, general problem solving techniques for a child who is spontaneous, whole body, and very into computers and gaming.
Okay, so spontaneous, whole body, into computers and games, and what was it for the math? Basic math skills? What was it?
Yes, teach basic math skills like times tables, general problem-solving techniques.
Okay. So if you're talking about memorizing the tables, so I don't know what, I don't know what she already has, but definitely games. There are a lot of games online that you can get for free, or purchase that have the multiplication tables that you learn them through games. But having the student make up his own games could be even better. And it probably would be better if the games, because he's spontaneous, if the games were more whole body type games, you know, big movement games where you have to move around, you know, like giant chess pieces or something like that. So the student could make up his own game. But here's what I want to say about this, though. Does it say how old the student is?
No, not this one.
Okay.
I don't know if Gail's still with us, if you want to type in the
maybe
question.
How old? Because if he's third, fourth, fifth, even sixth grade, he probably can't care less about memorizing the math tables. And I mean, I say that seriously, because if he's really into it, it doesn't matter if he memorizes the math tables now, or actually ever, because we have calculators and nobody figures out, you know, there's that little handful that does math problems in their heads or on paper, but everybody grabs a calculator. And so I know that's probably scandalous to some people, because no, they have to memorize their math tables, but they really don't. And when you take the pressure off, here's something that happens. They usually memorize their math tables. So if you give them a calculator, and if you give them the math, you know, the chart that has the tables on it, so that multiplication chart, and just always have it there to refer to, then you took the pressure off. They can continue with math higher and higher levels, because they don't have to worry about having their tables memorized. They can just look or use the calculator really quickly.
Right.
And so then that, you know, they're not sort of being punished or not being able to go ahead in their math, because you don't want to do that. You don't want to hold them back because they don't have their tables memorized. Then
so
beyond,
excuse me,
yeah.
So Gail did pop in. So he's 12. He is a he, and he's 12. And he seems,
okay.
It seems to be holding him up from doing multiplication and division problems.
Right. Give him a calculator and give him the math chart, and show him how to use those in helping him to learn how to do those math problems. And then beyond that, ask him if he's interested in learning, you know, in memorizing them. And you might give him ideas, because he might say, no, of course not. But you might give him some ideas first to show him that it might be easier than he thinks. And so here it is. You give him a math table chart, and you go through it and color all the ones he already knows, because he's going to know most of them, really, right? He's going to know all the zeros, all the ones, probably the twos. He's going to know the fives. And so, like, when you know 5 times 9, you also know 9 times 5, right? So a whole bunch of them will be colored in, and he's going to know the tens. So it's going to eliminate.
So Gail popped in again with, so don't worry about doing it on paper.
Don't worry about,
like, doing the actual, you know, if I'm not getting this right, Gail, just pop in. You know, so don't ask him to write it on paper or do it on paper.
Okay, so I'm not sure if she's asking, like, taking a quiz in the multiplication facts, or if she's saying don't ask him to do 318 divided by 27 on paper. He can still do 317 divided by 27 on paper if you think that's useful, but he can use the calculator to help him figure out how many times does 27 go, you know what I'm saying? So I can't show you, because I don't have that capability, But let's say it was 19 into 217. And he would go 19 into 21 is 1. That's easy. So you put 1, bring the 19 down, and then subtract. Whatever that is, he can use the calculator to estimate closely 19, how many, like what's 5 times 19? What's 6 times 19 to see, to bring it close to the number that he needs. And that's how he can use the calculator to help him do the long division or the long multiplication, 37 times 56. So if he doesn't have 6 times whatever memorized, he can look there, he can put that number down, carry the other number. So does that make sense? Hope that makes sense. So you use the calculator to help shape the problem.
Okay. Well, Gail,
and then, as I was saying, you could still play games. You could have him color in all the ones he knows, and chances are there are going to be maybe 8 left. And then you can come up with games and tricks and strategies, or have him come up with them, because if he's spontaneous, he'll probably figure out little tricks that he can do to learn those last few. If you want to go that next step.
Yeah. So Gail said, thank you for clarifying.
Okay.
So, all right. There's another one, looking for resources for movement-based whole body learning, specifically learning to read for an 8-year-old boy. And that comes from member Kimberly.
Okay. You won't find any. I mean, there's nothing that you can buy to do that. And so, again, I'm not sure where he is in reading. If you're starting from the very beginning, like with sounds, you need, if he likes working on the computer, you can get some fun online things that are interactive. If he doesn't, then you want to just teach him the sounds yourself using, you can use like the Wilson reading program is one. There's one called Max Scholar, which is online, which is a very good one. But again, if he needs more movement, you'll have to adapt it, which means, like, let's say he's learning ah, you put the ah on a card and put it on the floor, and then he bounces ah, or you play some other game. So, or he jumps on it and says ah. And then you have a whole bunch of them down on the floor. After he's learned a few, then you say, okay, jump on the I, jump on the ah. And so you would do the same thing as you progress to putting the sounds together. I wish I knew more about the little boy, but in mostly to teach reading, you need an Orton Gillingham type of approach. That's almost for anybody, because those people who are kind of born natural readers, the print learners, it doesn't matter what you use. They're going to learn to read even by themselves. They just figure it out. Everybody else needs an Orton Gillingham approach, which means it's a step-by-step phonics approach. And there are not very many that do that. So Max Scholar is one that does it online. The Wilson is one that does it with books. But again, if he needs more movement, you have to make games out of the lessons. So I hope that helps.
Okay, and we have another one from Jeanette. Can you give us some more ideas on how to teach spontaneous learners who learn best with movement?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it is what I already just said. They need to move. So they're exhausting in a way, okay? Because if you're the teacher, you're thinking you have to come up with all these things. And in a way you don't, because you can give it to them to come up with. So what you really need is like prompts to get them started. So maybe they watched a short video and then they go off and, you know, put their own costumes together and put on a little skit. Or maybe they go dig in the backyard to show you, you know, what kind of dirt there is. A lot of it is what they already like to do. There are programs and materials that you can get that have, you know, everything is project based. And so if you want help with that, you know, just go to Barnes and Noble and look through those and get something that gives you tons of ideas on teaching different topics. Again, it makes a little bit of difference how old this student is.
So Jeanette did pop in with that information. So her daughter's 14 and is ADD and dyslexic.
Okay, so ADD, we're going to, I wish I knew her assessment results, because ADD is often, I mean, first of all, we never use that term ever, but it's also often misplaced when it is used. So first the mom said she needed movement. That's usually not ADD, that's hyper, okay? ADD means attention deficit disorder, which is telling me that perhaps this student is imaginative or curious as well. And if she's 14, she probably has very definite ideas of what she likes and how she can learn it. But she needs permission to do that. And also, I don't know how long you've been homeschooling. If this is just, you know, your first year to it, if your daughter has been used to regular school, she's not going to think she can do these things that perhaps are in her mind that she would like to do. So you need to have a big conversation about it. If you've been homeschooling a long time, but doing more traditional stuff, then again, have a conversation. But I can see her, like, you know, let's say she's studying history, and I could see her interviewing people or making a video, a scrapbook, putting on demonstrations. Again, I don't know everything she would answer, so I don't know her interests and her talents, because we put them all together. But hopefully these are some ideas to get you started. It's, in other words, it's out of the book. It's let's do things, let's do projects. And if she can research, if she can go on the internet and find where things are and can do it, you even might be visiting different places.
Okay.
So I hope that helps.
Yeah, so Jeanette, is there any, let's just, because we have a bit more time, did you want to add anything else to pass along to Mary Emma? New to homeschool, yes, she believes she can't learn, and yes, video is good.
Oh, okay, so you're new to homeschool. Oh, wow. That can be so exciting. I mean, when we talk to kids who are new to homeschooling and they think they're not smart and they can't do anything, and you start saying, oh my gosh, look, you're a spontaneous learner. That means probably that you would like blah, 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 and they just light up. They go, really? I can do that? I mean, you're going to have so much fun if you're not scared to do it this way, and she will thrive. Wonderful and amazing.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll ask the group if there's any more questions, and maybe while you're thinking of, I have another question because this happened to my family. So let's say you have a child who's headed to college and has a learning style that does not work well, or sorry, learning disposition with doesn't work well with the SAT or the ACT or standardized tests. So any advice for that? A tough one.
So,
I know, a tough one.
Well, so Letty, are you saying they're not in college yet?
No, they got into college. Yay.
Oh,
Um,
oh, okay.
but we sort of struggled with this while she was prepping to try and
Oh,
get
got
into
it.
college.
Got it. Okay. All right. Well, a couple of things. Yes, there are people who just are not good at taking those kinds of tests. And of course, you can practice taking them. But some other options are, there are college, unless you're bent on going to a particular college, there are colleges now that do not require those tests. They want more portfolios and something that you write about your goals and why you want to go there and that kind of thing. So you actually can look for colleges that don't require those tests.
Great.
And the other thing is, another option for not taking the tests, at least if you're in California, I know there are people from all over, but in California, you can go to a community college first, and then you can transfer into another college. And normally you don't have to take any tests when you're transferring from a community college. So that's another option.
Okay.
If you are just bent on going to a particular one and you have to take that particular test, practice both. I heard you mention both of them, the ACT and the S. Sometimes one is easier for some students than the other. And then it's a matter of, if you really, really, really want to do it, to just get software that, or some kind of a practice program that works more with your style in learning how to take those tests.
Okay. Well, while you were speaking, Miriam, a flood of questions came in. So let's get to our members' questions. So from Sharon, what did you mean about students being inaccurately diagnosed with dyslexia? I forgot what slide I saw that on.
Okay, well, here at Learning Success Institute, we don't use any of those terms. And by the way, my master's is in special education. So I learned all of those terms, and I am supposed to be using those terms, and I have not used them for many, 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 many years, almost 30 years that I have not used those terms. Because when I finding out and then, creating our own assessments, I realized those are just words. When someone is diagnosed with dyslexia, first of all, the true term dyslexia is a neurological disorder that is like, I don't remember the percentage, but it's like 0.000 something, that there would actually be someone with a true definition of dyslexia. Everybody else is just having trouble learning to read. When they're having trouble learning to read, it means they're not a print learner. That means that they are picture learner, they're a hands-on learner, they're some other kind of learner. And usually they're not ready to learn to read until they're 8 or 9 years old. And this has been proven over and over. It is in the back. And people still don't pay attention to it, especially boys. Most boys are not ready to read till they're 8 or 9 years old. The eyes, the physical part of the eyes aren't even ready for it. The rods and the cones have not stabilized. The left to right movement is not stabilized. They're just not ready to read. When we make them start reading at 3, 4, 5 years old, even 6 years old, they can't do it, and it starts that spiral of failure. So, so getting back to reading here, this is why it's so important that when you do teach reading, you use an Orton-Gillingham approach. Unless you already know that for example, I was reading when I was 3. So it's not like I'm all upset because, what was done to me. No, I was reading before I went. I just did it. So if you have a child that's doing that, you don't have to do anything. They're just going to learn to read. But when you see the signs that they're not going to be readers, then first you have to wait until they're interested. And if you can wait till they're 8 or 9, That's amazing, because I've counseled parents to do that and worked with parents to do that many, many times, and it always works. And then when they're interested, we plug in an Orton Gillingham step-by-step phonics program. Not the run-of-the-mill phonics that has hit and miss here and there. It's an Orton Gillingham. It works with reading and spelling at the same time. It does short vowels first and goes in order. And it usually has some kind of a hands-on component where it's called either sound tapping, for the sounds, or you're using blocks, or you're bouncing a ball or something like that. So that's what I mean by I mean, if you want to use that term, fine, but it's really meaningless. It just means they need a step-by-step program, and they need it to be developmentally ready to use it.
Okay, so we've got 7 minutes left, and there's 2 more questions. So I think we're good on questions.
Okay.
So if anybody has another one, you can put it in. Since we scheduled the webinar to 11:30, it will stop. Gail asked just real quickly where the Power Traits assessment is. We actually call it learning style assessment. So if you go to our Find Your Product, and under that third tab called, product, select product, you can find it under learning style assessment. And Mary Emma, we should talk about if we need to change the terminology on the website.
Right, let's do that, because slowly we're changing it over in all the different places where we are. Yeah.
Okay, so from Teresa, we have, my 12-year-old daughter likes to read with and draw pictures. How do we use that with pre-algebra? Likes being creative, doesn't like to write, likes computers and online games.
Okay, well, so she might be asking how you use drawing with pre-algebra, because if she likes online stuff and games, you can certainly find programs online that are more of a game-like program.
Yeah, she doesn't like to write, but she likes computers and online games.
Yeah, so there are programs that do algebra with games online, so that's easy to find. Is that what she's asking?
We'll wait till Teresa comes back on. And then I'll go to the next question, but Teresa, if you're still here, we can respond. We have a set of 6-year-old American-born twins that we're adopting that were in kindergarten in public school this past year. What should we focus on as we homeschool them? We won't know where they are academically. From Carmen.
6-year-old twins are adopting were in first grade last year. Kindergarten last year.
In public school.
I would just play with them, see what they're interested in little by little, because if part of it is getting to know them. And don't worry about that they'll be behind, because when you do figure out what they can do and what they like, then everything will go really fast. If you plug in the stuff that meets their learning needs. So take 3 months, 6 months if you have to, just introducing different things and see what works with them. But I would do a lot together, a lot of reading together, little projects together, introducing some online stuff on the computer, different games, playing board games, all of that. You might already know some of that if you've done some in the in the family, like playing games and stuff. Go in the backyard, learn about the birds, just do a lot of real life kinds of things with them. That's what I would recommend.
Okay, and then we did hear back from Teresa. So I think, yes, she says, but doesn't Khan Academy. Is that like Khan Academy? So Teresa wanted to know about how to do pre-algebra.
Okay, well, Khan Academy is okay, but that's not games. I mean, if they're doing pre-algebra with Khan Academy, again, it could work for some students. It's a great place. Khan Academy is all kinds of wonderful stuff. But if your daughter's not interested in math in the first place, or specifically in algebra, and it's boring because it's most of Khan Academy is more traditional on screen, then you want to get something else that's fun to do. You want a pre-algebra program that's fun. So that's what you want to look for, and look on the co-op, because I don't know what's there right now under math. Look and see if there are any algebra, online or software that's interactive and fun, and even does more real life kinds of things. Like, what is this algebra used for? Like, when I do this problem, what is it for? What could I use it for? And there are programs out there that do that. It's like real life algebra.
Okay.
So, hope that helps.
All right. So I want to thank you, Mary Emma, for hosting this for our members, and I want to thank all our members who attended. And we will be posting the webinar, which will, show copies of the slides. Yes, is there anything? Oh, by the way, Teresa said thank you. Everyone said thank you who asked the questions.
You're welcome. You're welcome, Letty, and thank you for having me. It was a lot of fun. Sometimes I get a little frustrated because I can't talk to a person directly, but anyway, it works this way for people that are all over the place. So I'm happy to do it.
Well, thank you. Maybe we'll try and do this again in 2018, which is just around the corner. So,
right.
All right. Well, everyone, have a wonderful rest of the week. Enjoy the weekend. If you're going to watch the eclipse on Monday, make sure you got the special glasses, or there are some things you can do if you don't have them. I had an astronomer friend remind me to do that, even though in California we won't really be able to see it, the full solar eclipse.
Yeah.
So, okay, great. Well, thank you all. Have a wonderful day.
Everybody.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye.